Your Honor, I object!
And why is that?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Overruled.
Good call!
Mr. Chairman, it's got to be a great day for you. I just want to give you the table right now and say, man, Pam Bondi just killed it yesterday. It's got to be music to your ears. And also, speaking of ears, they just can't help but ask about Kash Patel. Must have their ears burning, and every single hearing is always Kash Patel, Kash Patel, Kash Patel. Oh, this is going to be a glorious day on Capitol Hill for you, sir.
It's a great day. In fact, later on this afternoon, I'm meeting with Kash Patel. So I've gone from having to watch my back with the FBI and having to endure all their leaks of disinformation to the mainstream media to discredit everything we were proving with evidence about the Bidens, to now having an FBI director that wants to meet with me and work with me and figure out how we can better get information to each other quicker so that we can hold people accountable. I mean, and then to have Pam Bondi, we're in communication with her, and you're going to hear about that within the next 24 hours. I think that there's a lot of hope within the House Oversight Committee now that finally the day is about to arrive where we can hold these scoundrels accountable and truly dismantle the deep state.
How refreshing was it for you to hear John Ratcliffe call out the lie of the Hunter Biden laptop as Russian disinformation? It's just music. It's like the angels singing.
Yeah. Look, John Ratcliffe was one of the first people to come forward. He was on the House Intelligence Committee. He and I served together when I was a freshman. And he said, look, what Adam Schiff's saying is not true. It is not true. They can't prove the validity of the Steele dossier, and that there's no evidence, there's no real evidence that Trump was colluding with Russia, which we know was the narrative throughout the 2020 presidential election and all that. And then when the laptop came out, he was one of the most vocal critics about the cover-up of the laptop. So he was attacked by the media as being dishonest, as being a conspiracy theorist. But here he is today, fixing to be confirmed to be the director of the CIA. And everything he said about the media being dishonest, about the deep state being dishonest, is true. And I mean, it is a different feel in Washington, D.C. right now when you've got people like John Ratcliffe, Pam Bondi, and Kash Patel about to be confirmed. That is daylight and dark from the deep state. They are the anti-deep state, and I'm just tickled to death.
I had a feeling you'd be in a very good mood, Mr. Chairman, today. So Pam Bondi, and I don't want to belabor this too much, but it was just too much. It was just so delicious to watch. She was smacking around. Adam Schiff, you got censured. You leaked the Nunez memo.
Yeah.
Your state is a crime-ridden hellscape for law and order.
Yep.
Adam Schiff then falling asleep during the same committee hearing. We have video of that, and so not a great showing for Adam Schiff. But it is so wonderful to see these things reasserted. You've obviously talked about the censure and voted for the censure yourself.
Yep.
This must have been really fun for you to watch.
It is really fun, and in addition to people like Adam Schiff being humiliated on national television, it's also got to be humiliating to the mainstream media that tried to sell the American people and indoctrinate the American people that our intelligence community was credible and that they were fair and justice was fair and that Donald Trump was a crook and that the Republicans were colluding with Russia and just all this stuff that is completely dishonest that now has been exposed. And the media, through the course of the last few years, their ratings have gone down. People are switching to the Benny Show and podcasts and things like that to get their news. No one believes what the mainstream media is selling. And I think that's proven by where the viewers are going. The viewers are going to people like you now. They don't get their news from the New York Times or the Washington Post anymore. They get it from podcasts and from people they trust. They find someone they can trust, and that's where they get the news from. And I think that that's one of the greatest things Donald Trump's done, as far as I'm concerned, is he's discredited the liberal mainstream media, and they needed to be discredited. And I hope that we have a strong media. You know, we need a media to provide oversight. It's not just about the checks and balances within the government. The media is supposed to be one of those checks and balances too. But they're so biased against Republicans, and they turn a blind eye to the obvious corruption. I mean, who wants to argue that Joe Biden's family wasn't influence peddling? But yet they tried to say that the whole time. When we proved that the banks flagged them for money laundering, for taking potential bribes, that they said that the money wasn't coming from companies in these foreign countries, they were coming from the actual countries. You know, they didn't care. If that had been Trump or any Republican, can you imagine? They would have been screaming from the rooftop, this is the biggest scandal in the history of America. So I think that we're seeing a change. And the American people, I believe, like this change. And that's what's got to be the most frustrating to the media is there's hope in America now. We've watched a decrepit, mental invalid, corrupt president for the last 4 years. And now we've got someone that's got energy, that's putting in young people like Pam Bondi that have a passion, and they're not afraid to debate. They're not afraid to do interviews. So I think that everybody in America is hopeful now.
Yeah, we really thank you for saying that, and we liken it to a relationship, whether it's your girlfriend or whether it's your business partner. That partnership is not going to continue if you lie to them.
That's right.
If every partnership must be established on truth, transparency, honesty, and being able to trust the other person.
Yep.
And if you can't trust that person, and if they constantly lie to you, then it's going to atomize. It's going to completely get severed. And nobody can put up with being lied to again and again and again. And we've seen MSNBC's viewership drop like by 50 and 60%. And some of those viewers are going to Fox. A lot of those viewers are coming to our program. And so it's an important moment right now to say what you just said. And we're really thankful that you said it. And we really hope that everybody, if you're looking for truth, that you go head on over and check out James Comer's new book. And I have a couple of follow-up questions about that. All the President's Money. Here's the cover. You've done it, Mr. Chairman. You've gone and actually written the book on this. We've said this, I think, introducing you many times. This is the man who wrote the book on Biden corruption, and now you've gone and done it. And lo and behold, in Joe Biden's farewell address, who's sitting right next to him is Hunter freaking Biden last night. So please, Mr. Chairman, what will the viewers find inside of this bombshell book?
Well, in the book, it's a forensic audit of all the money that the Bidens took in. I would be given a platform. I went on your show. I went on Hannity's show a lot. I went on Newsmax a lot to talk about the investigation. But I would only have, I would have a little more time on your show. But on Hannity, if I was on a 4.5-minute clip, Sean might talk for 3 minutes and I would have about 90 seconds. And you know how slow I talk. I mean, it takes me 90 seconds to get wound up. But in this book, I had all the ink in the world, all the pages in the world, and I talk about who the people were that sent the Biden's money, because I think that's important to know. And of course, they all have big foreign names that, a hillbilly from the foothills of Appalachia like me would have a hard time pronouncing on television. They were all crooks. Every one of them either had been in prison or ended up going to prison, or were on the run from going to prison, or under investigation and about to go to prison potentially. Every single person that wired the Biden's money. And it shows where the money would go through, how it would start in an LLC that he would have a partner with, a Devin Archer or a Jason Galanis or a Rob Walker. And then their role, it looked like, is if something bad happened, they would be the ones to take the blame. And we saw that with Galanis and Archer. Galanis, Archer, and Hunter Biden were equal partners in a deal. Jason Galanis is currently in jail. Devin Archer is about to go to jail, but Hunter Biden was never even questioned. On the same deal, two of the partners go to prison, and Hunter Biden's never even questioned by the federal government. And what the book does is it shows how all the money was laundered through the various shell companies and how it ended up in the Biden's bank accounts through incremental payments. It also goes into great detail about the obstruction I faced from the Department of Justice, from the Biden legal team, from the White House, and it talks about the weaponized media. And I name names of people in the media that we would provide information that would show bank records, emails. We would have footnotes and endnotes to show where the evidence came from. And they would go on TV and absolutely lie to the American people. No evidence. Joe's innocent. They struck out. And I mean, it was therapy for me, Benny, writing that book, because I was so frustrated. I mean, you look at me 2 years ago when this investigation started, I looked like you. I had a good dark head of hair and all this, and now I'm white-headed and wrinkled and everything else. But it was just, we had internal drama all last Congress. I write about that in the book. You know, we had, the first week getting a speaker, that set us back almost a month. Then we had the 3 weeks and the 3.5 weeks in the wilderness where the motion to vacate to get rid of McCarthy. And I talked how that affected the investigation. And it just, there was a lot of obstacles to overcome, but none were more difficult than the media. And it just talks about how dishonest the media is. And it's funny, there's not a single person in the media or on the Biden legal team that's disputed one thing about that book. And I mean, if you read the book, you'll understand everything about the investigation, what we did right, some mistakes that were made, the people who obstructed, what the Bidens did. And I think you'll conclude that it's the biggest political public corruption scandal of our lifetime.
You began this interview by saying how passionately excited you are to have the FBI, the CIA, Department of Justice cooperate with you and your committee. And you are now saying that this is the biggest corruption in history in our federal government. I mean, does this deserve another look in the Trump administration?
Yep.
Using your book maybe as a roadmap for where to begin?
I hope the book is a roadmap. I had to write the book. Writing the book wasn't about fame or fortune or anything like that. It was about getting the truth to the American people, because the American people didn't get the truth. I would give 90-second soundbite tidbits of truth on what conservative media would have me. But the liberal print media would just indoctrinate the readers that the Bidens did nothing wrong or they couldn't prove anything. That's complete bullcrap. You know, in the book, it talks about we discovered that there were 4 government agencies that had multiple investigations of multiple Biden family members. Those agencies were the IRS, the Department of Justice in multiple jurisdictions, the FBI, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. And in each instance, when it got to the point to where they were going to have to talk to Joe Biden, because again, everyone investigating Hunter Biden or Jim Biden, the brother, knew that they weren't making this money without Joe Biden. You know, they were selling access to Joe Biden. So when it would get to the point in any investigation, you've got to, ask Joe Biden, because he's the business model. You know, they're selling the Biden brand. That's what we learned in the investigation. That someone in the deep state would say, no, stand down. You can't do that. And then the deep state, we found in our investigation, when they wrote that letter before the 2020 election from 51 intelligence officials saying this was Russian disinformation, when the FBI was going to Twitter and Facebook telling them to censor the New York Post because you're about to get a story on a laptop and it's Russian disinformation, the FBI knew all along that laptop was legitimate. They had possession of that laptop for months. We also found in our investigation that when when the National Archives and the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago for those documents, they knew Joe Biden had mishandled documents. So the crimes from the FBI are pretty bad. You know, you remember the Smirnoff thing? That was something that never was a big part of the investigation, but the FBI, 2 anonymous FBI agents, gave it to Charles Grassley, and it was like, then they said, oh, yeah, this is a credible witness. This is a credible witness. We've used him. And then all of a sudden you read in the newspaper one day, they just came out of the woodwork. All the networks just at 6:01 or 6 o'clock and 1 second a.m., they all drop a story. Oh, he's been indicted for lying. And the media says, oh, their star witness. He wasn't our star witness. You interview everyone. We've interviewed some of the craziest people in this thing. We were contacted by people in Ukraine that wanted to be paid. I mean, everybody we dealt with in Ukraine was corrupt as hell. So I can sleep just fine at not sending them American tax dollars. But in a big investigation, you don't leave any stone unturned. And, the FBI just did a lot of dirty tricks. Another person we were about to interview, they indicted right before we were set to set up the deposition. I mean, they did everything they could to obstruct. But the most troubling thing the FBI did, and the Department of Justice, is they would collude with CNN and MSNBC and the Washington Post to write the story before anyone would have time to respond, and that seed would be planted in people's minds that, this investigation is not going anywhere. The Bidens haven't done anything wrong. And that's why I wrote the book. And I've read a lot of political books in my lifetime. I don't think there's ever been one that's been more extensive and more substantive and focused on an issue, and the issue was the Biden corruption, and brings all the receipts. If you look at the footnotes and endnotes in this book, I mean, it's a lot of pages. The footnotes and endnotes are real small, but I hope everyone reads it because you'll learn what goes on in an investigation. And a lot of people, Benny, this is the last thing. A lot of people say, well, why didn't you arrest Merrick Garland? Like I could go in, bust through the doors of the Department of Justice and handcuff Merrick Garland and cuff him and stuff him like the Dukes of Hazzard, and throw him in the police car and drive off. That's not the way it works. So we investigate, then we're supposed to turn it over to the Department of Justice and the FBI. Now that we've got a Trump administration, I'm meeting with these people. We've done the investigation. Jim Jordan's done aspects of the investigation in judiciary. They can hold them accountable. I want to hold more than the Bidens. I want to hold the people in the government accountable for the cover-up, because I think the cover-up is just as bad, if not worse, than the crime. Because there are checks and balances in our system to catch corrupt politicians. They did. They caught the Bidens. They just never did anything about it.
Which is actually far worse, because this is the people who we pay billions of dollars to every single year to administer justice in an impartial way. And so it destroys the entire system. The entire system crumbles from the top down, as it ever does, no matter what it is, whether it's P. Diddy or Epstein or Bill Clinton or the Bidens. This is how you lose and erode all public faith. And there's zero public faith. This is how Pam started her hearing yesterday, saying there's no public faith anymore in the Department of Justice. And we've got to restore that. And that's gonna be pretty painful for some people. So I hope that news that you're going to announce with Pam Bondi is a continuation of this investigation, now that they actually have the tools and the resources. And since you name dropped CNN, Mr. Chairman, we have a clip for your viewing pleasure here.
All right.
From 24 hours ago on CNN, your work actually making it onto CNN's airwaves. They were talking about how the Bidens got their money, and Kevin O'Leary goes, everybody knows how the Bidens got their money. Talking about your work, Mr. Chairman, here we go, your triumphant moment.
This. All right.
Letting people get rich. It's about not letting rich people control the political process and not having our politicians captured by those rich people such that they can't institute regulation and common sense laws to make sure that the people at the top don't abuse the people at the bottom. And our system in Washington is broken.
That's fair. It's all fair, but half the country's still wondering how Joe Biden got rich.
Yeah, okay, so here...
How did he get rich?
But if Joe Biden got rich...
How did he get rich? Does anybody understand how that happened?
I actually think that, Kevin, your question about Joe Biden's legacy and how he will be seen is actually extremely important, because...
He wrote a book! Mr. Chairman, he says, the country's wondering, like, how's Biden become a multi-millionaire? Mm-hmm. He wrote a book.
I wrote a book, and they're not disputing it. It came out. It's been out for 48 hours, and they haven't said a word, even though they threatened to sue HarperCollins for signing a contract with me to write the book. They intimidated HarperCollins. They intimidated Fox News. They intimidated every platform I would go on throughout the investigation to talk about the work we're doing. Well, here's the book. I mean, it is as detailed as anything. I mean, it is a full forensic audit, and they crickets. They just hope that nobody reads it. But it's been the #1 political book on Amazon for 4 days in a row. So, I think people in America are interested about that investigation. I think people were keeping up with it. I think they're curious, and I'm real proud of the book, and I hope people buy the book because it explains a lot. It answers a lot of questions I think every American had about the Bidens, about our investigation, and about anything else pertaining to the investigation.
So it seems like the projection from the Bidens is that we got away with it. Last night at Joe Biden's farewell address, which was completely mogged by Donald Trump's inauguration photograph. I mean, there should have been a time where everyone talked about Joe Biden. Nobody was talking about Joe Biden. It was a really sad address in the Oval Office, but something stuck out to us. One of the 4 people there physically in the room, Hunter Biden was one of them. I mean, this seems to be a message, right? And Joe Biden really likes sending these messages. Hunter Biden's hanging out. Let's like bring your degenerate kid Make-A-Wish Foundation to work day, right? But here's Hunter Biden there in the White House, fresh off the pardon, and they're saying, no, we're untouchable. Is that going to fly in the new Trump administration?
I hope not. The ball's in their court. They can go after him. The media's cocked and ready to go. They're going to go after Trump the way they went after me during the investigation, and they're going to say, this is what they're going to say. They're going to say, oh, it's retaliation. It's retaliation. No, it's justice. It's holding people accountable. You know, all my investigation focused on were the financial crimes. You can look on the laptop. There were a hell of a lot more than just financial crimes committed by that man. I mean, you know, the sex crimes, the
Yes.
you know, the drug crimes and all of that other stuff. But we just focused on financial crimes. The financial crimes alone should concern every person in America, that man is sitting beside the Vice President of the United States in the Oval Office. And you know, I believe that if you research Hunter Biden, we didn't study this part, but it's just an observation, that he spent more nights in the White House over the past 4 years than he did outside of the White House. So in other words, the White House was his primary residence, even though his primary residence may have been the Sugar Brothers condo that burned down last week in California. I think he spent more nights in the White House. And this guy is a criminal. I mean, he is a criminal. He has taken $8 million from the Chinese government. I mean, there's no other way to say it. That was another thing that the book explains, the money from China. Well, let's be specific. Okay, that's the way the media would say, the money from China. Where in China? Was it from a company? They would say it was an energy company in China. There was no energy company in China. You know, the money came from a company called HK Limited. They were domiciled in some slum in one of these Chinese cities, and we never could find anything on HK Limited. But that's where the money came from. And then it went through, so it was essentially a Chinese shell company, and all the assets in that CEFC, which was the conglomerate that Hunter was supposedly working for, once it dismantled, when all of their partners started going to prison, their assets end up in the Chinese government treasury. So it was always a part of the Chinese government. It wasn't a private company in China. Now, Burisma was a private company. It was a corrupt company in Ukraine that needed a prosecutor fired. But, you know, with Burisma, I said in the book, that's the only legitimate thing Hunter Biden did. He shouldn't have been on the board. It was a conflict of interest. But it was a real company. It was corrupt as hell, but it was a real company. They listed him as a director. And what he got charged for by Weiss was not paying taxes on the money he made in Burisma. They gave him a W-2. He just didn't pay taxes on it because, you know, he's above the law. All this other money that we found, the $27 million in the foreign wires, plus the $8 million in loans, he never paid a penny of taxes on that, according to the Irish whistleblowers. So Hunter Biden could easily owe him another $10 million, maybe $15 million to the IRS. I mean, that's what was so shocking to me that we never could get out there. The whistleblowers who investigated Hunter for years said the only thing he got prosecuted on was what was on his W-2. He didn't list any of this other money that we found on his W-2. I mean, he on his taxes. So
criminals don't often do that, Mr. Chairman. Criminals don't often go yelling to the authorities their crimes. But yeah. I guess we're going to have to suspend some disbelief here. two real quick points that you brought up. One, you said there were voluminous sex crimes. Some of those were exposed quite dramatically by Marjorie Taylor Greene in your committee hearing. Nonetheless, we think this is some of the most important crimes because it proves the absolute degeneracy of the Bidens. Hunter Biden kicked out of $10,000 a month sex club for acting like a spoiled child and doing things that I can't actually say live on the show. If you go through this article, it's sickening. Do you think that there's I know that he's been apparently his dad pardoned him for all of this, but what should happen next from the DOJ when it comes to some of the heinous acts of the Bidens?
I mean, the sky's the limit. You know, the pardon goes back to 2014. And the reason the pardon goes back to 2014 is that's when we requested the bank records. All of the evidence that's in my book, all the evidence that was in the final report, and my book's a lot more extensive than the final report. It starts from 2014, and most of the financial crimes were during the last 2 years of the Biden vice presidency, when Obama was president and Joe Biden was vice president. So if you go back further, you know, there's other things he did prior to that, but we could only get bank records. We were pushing it. No one thought we would get any bank records. We started in 2014. The Justice Department could say, okay, you've been pardoned from 2014 to today. Well, let's look at 2013, just 2013. 2012, 2013. We know he did stuff then. We just didn't get the bank records. We didn't talk about it in the book or the report because we didn't have the evidence. The Justice Cabinet could get that. I mean, if they want to set an example out of Hunter Biden, they can do it. But, you know, at the end of the day, I would bring Joe in. No one has ever questioned Joe Biden about this. Sit him down. That's why, you know, there's some speculation as to why Joe should pardon himself. He hasn't pardoned himself. I do not think he'll pardon himself. I think he'll pardon his brother in the next few days. But at the end of the day, you know, ask Joe Biden. Let's bring him in. And then, you know, because he was the ringleader. You know, he lied to the American people, said he never met with any of these people. He met with them all. And so why do you lie about it? And then he said, well, there was a wall between Joe Biden and his son. Well, we learned in the investigation they had the same bookkeeper. In fact, Joe Biden never paid for bookkeeping. So that was a benefit from the influence peddling schemes. You know, the bookkeeper was being paid through Hunter Biden, whose only job was selling access to Joe. I pay thousands of dollars for bookkeeping services. You know, not only do I have to do my own bookkeeping for my business and you know, myself, but I have all these financial disclosure forms to fill out, and that takes up a lot of time. He didn't have to pay for anything. Hunter was paying. Then they had the same law firm. So you don't have a wall between you and your son if you use the same bookkeeper and you use the same law firm and you live in the same house. You know, I mean, the house where your classified documents are stored, classified documents that ended up in countries that were wiring you money, by the way. I mean, the whole thing implicates Joe Biden. And our investigation at the end of the day was of Joe Biden, not Hunter Biden, but Hunter Biden was the main witness, as well as Jim Biden.
Yes. It seems like Joe Biden might be preparing, actually, for a deposition, because last night he had hidden under his desk a box of tissues. He was sitting on a pillow.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's prepared for a rough time. He's prepared to have a tough couple of years.
Yeah.
We'll see, and we'll hope. And we're not going to, I mean, we call you the Bulldog, Mr. Chairman. We know you're a dog with a bone. We know you're not going to let go. And we really look forward to seeing some justice here. Like, this shouldn't just be like we won, and so now we're going to wash clean all these sins. We tried that with Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
And it didn't work out great. You know, Donald Trump ended up with a bullet, you know, in the ear, and facing 470 years in prison. So I think there should be justice, and it should be delivered impartially. And the way to prove that you actually have a Justice Department is by prosecuting people, whether they're famous and powerful or whether they're just low level. I mean, that's just right. So
that's right.
we thank you, Mr. Chairman, for delivering with this book, and we very much look forward to reading it ourselves. We're gonna go pick up a copy, ladies and gentlemen. You can too, here on Amazon, #1 bestseller right now. Go follow the chairman, of course, and I think he's barely even getting started. I think he's gonna have a fun run here in the next couple of years. So please go follow James Comer. 220,000 Americans can't be wrong. Follow the great chairman. Godspeed, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thanks for the great work you've done covering this.